Hello, Tony here again. Well, I've not posted a video for a while, so I thought I'd get around to doing one this weekend. I've been working on some different panels for my Cessna 172 collection, and also for use in some other panels as well, predominantly general aviation ones at this moment in time. So I've been working on some different instruments, and so what I've got to show you in this video is just something. I think might have mentioned that I was working on some Garmin radios. Well, I've kind of not finished that work now, but I'm getting towards the end. I think I've got maybe one or two more instruments to do for the set that I want to do at the moment, and probably still some more in the future. But so this is a little
Traffic.
radio stack of Garmin instruments, very similar. In fact, not similar, exactly the same as the radio stack that you will find in the default X-Plane 172. So a Garmin audio panel, the 530 and 430, the Garmin Transponder, and the S-Tech Autopilot. So basically mimics that standard aeroplane, and obviously there's some variations with mix and match with some different radios. You can make all sorts of panels to make up some of them. So I'm going to make a few of my favourite ones up and build them into a one panel instrument, such you can select any of those panels. So I'll be able to fly pretty much any one of those. But I mean, from a two panel setup point of view, that will basically mean just the right hand panel changes. The left hand panel should stay the same unless I do some variations of that. Maybe for some aircraft the left panel may have some variations in it, possibly if there's a turbo and a non-turbo model or something like that. You might get some of the limits on some of the instruments changing, but other than that, the left panel will depend on the aircraft, of course, in terms of what those variations is. But in this particular case, it's mainly just the radio stacks that change with all the different variations. So essentially, in my setup, how I'm planning to have it, the radio stack will be on the right hand side monitor. So
Traffic.
This will be a little variation of that. You keep hearing a little traffic symbol in it when I've got a little bug in one of these panels, but what I've managed to do is in this new Garmin transponder, which I'm going to be showing off in a minute, I've got a traffic system to work, but I just need to suppress it because I'm on the ground at the moment, so I shouldn't really be getting those warnings coming through at the moment. But so it's a little thing for me to look at, but I can show you that in operation. It does actually work quite well, but I'm getting a few little spurious ones still coming through because I've only just literally coded that up in the last sort of day. Okay, so let's switch on and we can see what we got here then. So we've got the you see it went through a little self-test screen there, the transponder. So that's probably the newest one of the collection. I was to say the 530 and the 430 have been around for a bit, and so these are the X-Plane overloads that have been there before. I do plan to enhance these a little bit in terms of just tidying up from a colour, and I'm going to incorporate my my panel lighting scheme into them, so it's not too much of a change, but I will just do a slight variation of the existing overlays, but they're pretty good quality anyway, so not really much to do on that front. The audio panel, I can't remember if I've shown before or not, but this is a GMA 340. It's used, I mean, I think it's one of the most popular Garmin units in terms of numbers sold. I mean, it's just been fitted to so many different aeroplanes, GMA 340. I mean, you'll just find it everywhere. It's been around for years. They've only just recently, in the last year or so, come out with some new models, the GMA 342 and 345, and they've stopped doing the GMA 340 now. But yeah, I've seen it and used it in many aeroplanes. GMA 340. Been around for years, but not there. So you'll see that in a lot of panels, and hence that's why I decided to do that. And I've also done I think I showed these. Can't remember. My memory's failing me now. But I also did a GMA 345, which is the updated version. Very similar, but it's got obviously some newer features such as Bluetooth and whatnot. So there you go. Not much to say about those. The S-Tech I don't believe believe you've probably seen before, so I will talk a little bit about the S-Tech Autopilot. In fact, we'll do no, we don't. We can kind of do this, do them concurrently as we go along. So what I'll probably do is I'll need to go flying in a minute to show the transponder off, and so we can put the autopilot on and show what that is. But it's not much to say other than it works exactly the same as the X-Plane aeroplane in terms of its functionality, as should the transponder. But the transponder will be better than the one in X-Plane because it has a lot more features. The one version in X-Plane does not model all of those features, so it's just a basic transponder with a bit of squawk code entry and mode changing, and that's about it. This has got all the other function features, which you can see on the right hand side of the display there, and I'll talk through what they are, but that's just basically from the real world unit. So let's get cracking. So first off then, let's talk about the transponder. Obviously you can switch it on and off with the buttons here, the on, standby, all buttons. It goes through this little self-test page at the beginning, and then it comes up with the squawk code and the mode. So the mode is shown over on the left. So currently we're in standby mode. We can go to on, or we can go to alt, but you can see there when you're in standby mode, if you go to on or alt mode, you see it goes into this ground mode, because what I've got incorporated here, and this is again something that's not in the standard X-Plane plane, but in the real unit you can set this transponder to be triggered to know when it's in airborne mode. So there's a number of ways of doing that. You can either wire up a weight on wheel switch if you have one in the aircraft, sorry, a weight on wheels connection from your weight on wheels switch, to tell the transponder that when you're on the ground and when you're airborne, or you can set up an airspeed trigger such that when you're over a certain airspeed, say I don't know 40 knots or whatever, that is the point at which it deems that you're now airborne or you're on the ground. So that's basically what that mode does, and therefore, so if you select alt mode, it will actually go into this ground mode until you become airborne, and then therefore you won't have to push the button to go into alt mode just after you take off, because it will do it automatically for you. So we'll see that in action. So if we've we'll toggle it into altitude mode. So it's gone into this ground mode now, and as we take off, you should see that will toggle into the proper alt mode. So the transponder's got the usual ident button, as all transponders have. The reply indicator is down in this little left-hand corner. You'll see that when it starts replying, when we're actually airborne to interrogations. The VFR button will put in your favorite VFR code, so I think you can program that in the user settings, so you can toggle that. I've got that set for 1200 at the moment, and then you can click it again and it will take you back to the code that you was on before you chose the VFR code. So nice little way of just automatically going to the default VFR code or back again. And then obviously you can key the code in like that, or you can do you can use a clear button and go back if you've made a mistake, or you can, even after you've entered, press the clear button. It works up to 5 seconds after you've entered a code. So again, that took a little bit of coding, but that functionality is in the real unit, so I felt it should be in this one, as I do like to make them as realistic as possible. So obviously those buttons are self-explanatory. The 8 and 9 buttons obviously you don't use for a squawk code, but they're used for the entry of the times. 8 and 9 are obviously used in times, and also they're used for the display brightness control as well, the up and down buttons for that when we get into those functions. So let's just talk about these other functions that we can talk about while we're on the ground here, and then I won't have too much to talk about when we're flying, and I can concentrate on that a little bit more. So what we've got here then is let's go back to what we start with. So we start with pressure altitude. At the moment is 0. You have a choice in the user settings to set this to be flight level, feet or meters. So this one's set up for flight level at the moment. So this will increment as the pressure altitude changes, and you'll see that count up. The next functional screen is a flight timer. Again, the flight timer has got a few different choices in the user properties. You can get it to remember the flight time over a series of flights. So if you're doing a multi-leg flight and you want to know the flight time for the whole trip, you can set it up in the settings, or in our case the user properties, to do the remembering of the flight time and carry it over. Or you can get it to reset every flight, and you can also get it to do it all manually. So you can start and stop the flight time when you want to using the start and stop button here, or it will do it based on that airborne trigger again. So it can use that same airborne trigger that you've used to start the modes off over here, as you can use for the flight time. So this particular one at the moment is set up with the user properties so that auto triggers. So we'll see that starts after we take off, and we won't have pushed any buttons to actually start that off. It will start automatically, and it will stop automatically. One of the other features it has is you can set up to, I think it's 99 seconds. So the user properties again allows you up to 99 seconds as a delay for when you drop back into ground mode, and when that trigger basically denotes that you're back in ground mode, what the delay is. I think the default is 24 seconds, so I've just left it at that. So after we land, it will still stay in alt mode initially, but about 20 odd seconds later it will drop back into ground mode. So that's by design. So we'll watch out for that. So that's the flight time. The altitude monitor is a feature that when you start the altitude monitor, as you say there, I've just clicked start, it will monitor your altitude that you're currently at that point in time, and you've already pre-recorded or pre-entered some climb and descend values not climb and descend values, some upper and lower limit values above which you want that altitude monitor to warn you that you're coming outside of the altitude when you press that start. So if once you're in the cruise and you're level, and you want to make sure that you're not going to deviate from that level, you push the start stop button, and this will then monitor your altitude. And if you go outside of the what you set in the user properties for your above and below, and you can set different limits for the above and as you can from the below, but again it's within the bounds of what Garmin allow for what the limits are going to be. So it's a little bit of a tighter band on the down, not wanting you to descend that much, but you are allowed to go a bit higher in altitude. When you exceed those limits, the altitude monitor will give you a warning, and there is audio warnings associated with that as well. So you can choose between a tone, a male voice, or a female voice, and I've got those incorporated into this unit as well. So we'll have to remember to do that. Only when it's turned on. You don't get the warning obviously if it's not turned on. That's why the display is blank saying it's not active at this particular point in time. But when it is active, you'll get the display of how much you're out, and here it will say above or below in terms of what that number relates to, whether you're above your altitude or below your altitude. An OAT and a density altitude display, fairly self-explanatory there. An up timer, very simple. There you can just start it and it will start counting, and it will just keep going all the way up. You can see the seconds, the minutes, and the hours there, for as long as you want to record something or time something, and then stop. A lot of units seem to have these timer functions in, so it was good that I wrote a lot of this stuff a long time ago, so you reuse some of it, or lots of it, for a lot of these functions. So start and stop, again, if you stop and you start again, it will just carry on counting. You can start and stop as many times as you want, but then when you want to clear it down to 0, you just push the clear button and it clears. Fairly easy. Next one is the countdown timer. Now the countdown timer is a little different, obviously, in so much that you have to set a time first. So what you do there is you set the cursor button and you key the value in that you want. So I'm not going to do anything particularly long here. You saw that I had already had 7 seconds in, so I'm going to just leave that in there. And then when you push the start button, it will count down, and you should get an audio warning when it gets to the point.
Timer expired.
There we go. Timer expired, and the word expired is now flashing on the display there, and it's now starting to go into a count up timer. But you know that it's counting up there, even though you're in countdown, because the word expired is there and countdown has disappeared. So you just stop that in the usual way. You see it's now stopped now, and then you just press clear. And when you press clear, it goes back to the value that you last entered. So if you want a different value, again, you just push cursor again and then enter the different value, and it will start counting. It will start counting down again, so we can do something shorter this time.
Timer expired.
There's the warning, and the expired again, exactly the same. So that's a nice little timer. If you want to be reminded of something in a set period of time, you can just put the time in there and start the timer, and away you go. So these are all just side functions, really, as opposed to the real use of what the transponder's for. But they always seem to put these functions into boxes. Pressure out. We're back to pressure altitude. Yeah. Okay. So one of the other features that you may see in the user settings, I haven't got it set up here because I've got it set up to use the external dim from the aircraft, but you can set manual dim, and if you have set manual dim in the user properties, automatically when you cycle through these functions here, at the very end, after the countdown time, before it jumps back to pressure altitude again, there'll be a little bar appear here, and I think the word is brightness, or brightness? Yeah, brightness, I think it is. And you use the 8 and the 9 button basically to make that bar get higher or lower, and it'll adjust the brightness of this backlit display for you. So that's what they're for. And obviously the 8, I didn't show them on the timer. Let's just go back there. But the timer there is that's where you get the 8 and the 9 button on in use for the timer, and the brightness. But obviously we've not got the brightness turned on at the moment, but you can do that in the user settings if I need to do that. Clear, stop, start, cursor. Yeah, we've seen. Okay, so we've seen all the functions there pretty much. The one we probably want to just keep an eye on initially is we can come back to the pressure altitude. Oh, the other thing just quickly to say is that on the altitude monitor, if you're not, again, this is a feature of the real unit, that if you're not on the screen where it shows altitude monitor at the time that the altitude limit is reached, it will automatically flick you back to that screen and show you, so it will automatically jump back to this screen with the display of it, and it will issue an audio warning as well, saying leaving altitude, I think it says. So that's that. And the pressure altitude, I think, has got some arrows here as well when you're climbing or descending. Depending on how much you're climbing or descending, you either get a little arrow or a slightly bigger arrow for two different types. And again, that's based on what you key in the user properties in terms of what your normal climb and descend rates are. That's where I was getting confused with the climb and descend rates earlier. I think the only other features to talk about are on this range of transponders. You'll notice that in the X-plane implementation, it's a black background with lighter text, so it's like at the negative of this, and this particular unit does have the ability to do a positive or a negative mode. So when you install the unit as part of the settings, and again in part of the user properties that I've coded into this particular unit, is you have a setting for auto, positive or negative. So you can force have it on positive. This is what they call the positive display. You can force it onto the negative, which is the way it looks in the default X-plane aeroplane. Or you can set it to auto. Now this one is set to auto, so what I can quickly do is I can change the time of day, and you'll see that this has now gone into night mode. So in the auto mode, it's looking at the amount of ambient light and making a determination that once it gets to the point where it deems it's dark enough, in other words it's getting into night time, it flips over to this negative mode. So it looks exactly the same as the one in X-plane now, but it's that all the functions are exactly the same, except for now it's this negative dark background and the lighter text. So everything's just flicked over. So that's all exactly the same, but coded now with a flip and the different color change. So again, that took a little bit of doing. Not so much with the text, that was fairly easy, but with the squawk, the larger squawk codes and whatnot. But again, nice little feature. You may prefer the positive, you may prefer the negative. So it can be forced. There's a particular aircraft model that has it forced on one, like it looks like in the X-plane aircraft. It looks like it's forced onto this display. It doesn't show the other version. I think actually out of the two, I think I probably prefer the daylight one. That one, but that's just a personal preference, I suppose. So that's it. That's the transponder. We can go for a little fly now and show the autopilot, and we can see some of the functions that we're not able to see on the ground. So watch out for the ground toggling to alt, and watch out for the pressure altitude will rise. Excuse my bad flying at the moment because I'm not on the proper sim, and I'm just using no pedals and a twist grip for yaw control, and this joystick is not the best. So there you go, the airspeed's already alive and gone over the threshold limit, so the alt has come up now, and it's starting to reply to interrogations, and you can see we're getting the arrow now saying that we're actually we're climbing, and you can see the flight level number is starting to climb up. And the flight time has started. You see that we've been flying there for 35 seconds now. Well, the altitude monitor's on. Did I accidentally turn that on?
Traffic.
Oh, and we've got a traffic warning there somewhere, so we've got some traffic around us to look out for. Where is he? Okay. So, just climbing out here. And then while we're doing that, I think what we'll do is we'll turn the autopilot on, so we can turn the heading mode on. It would have been useful if I would have made sure that the bug was in the right position, fell hand, not the best. Okay, so we have heading mode obviously on there, and VS mode, and obviously when you turn VS mode on, it picks up the VS that you were flying at that time. So 1,000 feet per minute is probably a little strong. We'll come down a little bit, and you get the trim annunciations as well as it's auto trimming. And so you're probably used to, if not this one, but the other autopilot's very similar. You know, you've got the nav mode for coupling to the nav information from these boys up here. Approach mode for flying your ILSs and approaches. You can do a back course with the reverse button. An altitude hold, and obviously the VS mode that we're in now while we're climbing or descending from that. So have a look at I think Laminar have got a nice little manual on their autopilot implementation, and so basically it operates the same as that. It's a little, I think it's got a few extra displays on here that the one maybe in the X-Plane aeroplane doesn't have. Because again, if you look at the manual for the real world unit, it does do some other things. Now you can only of course implement those features that obviously the sim is capable of making use of and using, else they just become dummy features. So sometimes, you know, they're useful to have them as a dummy feature just to show them on the display, but they're not actually doing anything in the sim. Other times it's just not worth the effort, or it's not possible to implement them exactly as it's done in the real world. But these are pretty close, so that's fairly self-explanatory in terms of the S-Type autopilot. So just going on to the altitude monitor then. So we're still climbing this up. Let's put ourselves into altitude hold for a minute. And level off. Good. So now with the altitude monitor, what's that saying? Okay, yeah. So we're not climbing or descending at all now. So with the altitude monitor, when I turn it on, it will just go to 0 feet. So the whole time I leave it on the autopilot, who does a very good job of keeping it straight and level, you'll see that that'll stay at 0 feet. Now if I on purpose say let's do a climb, you should see that once it detects, it's only going to do this in 100 feet increments, so it will take a little bit of time until obviously we reach that point. But as it toggles outside of the limits of what we've originally asked for, you should see that altitude monitor. So now, okay, now it's saying we're 100 feet above the altitude that we set. I can't remember what I've got the limit set for here. Might want to make this excuse me, a little higher. So we're 200 feet above now, but you should hear an audio warning.
Traffic.
Oh, there's traffic again. Where is that traffic?
Traffic.
Okay.
Traffic.
I think we're not taking evasive action, so...
Leaving altitude.
Oh, there we go. So 500 feet is what I have it set to. So you can see now it's flashing above, and we got that audio message saying we're leaving the altitude that we had it set to. So I think what I'm going to do is turn here.
Traffic.
See if we can clear that traffic. So that's pretty much it, really. There, the Garmin and the S-Tech Autopilot that are part of this mainly Garmin stack that's going to be part of one of
Traffic.
my right hand side panels, and that should be a nice little addition for my one of my panels. So keep watching. I'm sure I'll have some more videos. Working on plenty of stuff. Nothing quite close enough to show yet, but yeah, we might have some different videos, I think, maybe coming up, or some more instrument ones and some more panel ones, but maybe we'll start getting into doing a little bit of hardware and building a panel up. I think getting close for that now. So keep watching. Thanks for watching this video. Cheers. Bye.